Hey y'all, Fred here. Thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to do some cutting with the OK-223. This is supposed to be an M390 steel. I do have some indications that that actually may be true, although we don't know how hard it is or how good the heat treat on it was. Very happy to finally be getting into some of these replica knives that we have all been wondering about. That's why we've been doing all the cut testing leading up to now with all the well-known knives so we could get a baseline. If this is your first time joining us on the Redneck cutting series, this is not a professional, formal cutting affair. We're not measuring the exact number of linear inches and all that kind of stuff. No, I have my Redneck sharpness test. We go from number 1, which is it cuts like a spoon, to number 10, which is sharper than a divorce lawyer on a retainer. And so we are going to base it on those factors. These are for my own personal uses. I enjoy sharing that with you. I know a lot of you have either bought or are interested in one of these, this one or the OK-81, which we have also done some testing on as well. Both interesting knives for a whole lot of reasons. This one has been just one that I have given pure hell about for quite a while. If you've seen my review videos, I've done a couple on this thing, that from the get-go, this has had issues. I have mostly gotten those issues worked out. Before we get too deep into here, if you would, please go down below. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. That really helps channels like me. Throw me a thumbs up if this is cool. Would like to see some more of it. That also is helpful, so thank y'all so much for doing that. Again, I have a couple of different reviews where, one, I did the initial review on this thing. It came out not too good, needs lots of work. Then I did some mods where I did a bunch of stuff, including cutting away the lock bar access. That's one of the things about these knives, is they don't come with this compression lock access cut away. It's just solid all the way across the top, so you have to take a Dremel to it. That was a bit of a pain in the butt. But then I also noticed, as I was inside, that the tang of the blade was scraping in along the steel liners, and the action on it was terrible. It was awful. So I got in there and started digging around and saw there were burrs that had been left untended to on the tang of the blade. The detent ball hole on the tang of the blade had burrs around the detent ball hole, which was another reason leading to really poor action. This knife, even after all that attention, has almost no detent at all. It's there, but just barely. That actually makes it look even stronger than it is. You can fail this knife so easy all day long. As a matter of fact, it takes real effort to make sure you flip it hard enough. You'll see that I have now figured it out after 10,000 flips. The strength that I need, it bounces. You can see again, that's because that detent does not hold anything in there. You can see it's constantly going to bounce out. That irritates me to no end. I have tried so hard to love these pair of threes, which obviously this is modeled after, and just these knives all seem to just give me pure hell. Really want to love it. I love the contoured carbon fiber scales. The feel of it is fantastic. I think it's well done. I like even this carbon fiber pocket clip. This has been very good to me. I did have to grind away. The front of that had a very steep angle. It matched the back angle, and that was too steep to ride up easily over your pants pocket. Grind it back, just a little bit of sandpaper like that to that angle. Now it works like a champ. So I'm getting it there. This actually has skiffs in it, believe it or not, but I had to tighten the bearings, had to tighten the pivot screws so tight to prevent it just from totally bouncing all the way out every time, that you can see the action on it is pretty lousy, even on skiffs. So I'm probably just going to put the old original bearings back in if skiffs aren't going to make that big a difference in a knife like this, because again, just there's little details. The quality control on this thing is no good. So the question is, why do you even bother with it? Why not just give it away, throw it away, put it away, and never look at it again? And the reason is because I'm trying so hard. I think that this would be the size and the shape and the style, the ergonomics of these knives. I mean, pair of threes are one of the most popular EDC knives for a reason. There's so many features and elements to love on this thing. If I could have one in nice carbon fiber scales that are contoured with a real M390 blade, which these have been tested to be by some dudes on Reddit. Now, you can take that for whatever it's worth. However, if you've been on Reddit, you'll know those guys are pretty hardcore over there. And they don't put up with much crap, and they certainly aren't going to give props to a knife like this unless it was genuinely the truth. So they did XRF testing, and the chemical composition matches M390. So we know the steel is M390. What we don't know is the heat treat or the hardness rating. If I had to guess, I'm going to say that could be anywhere from 56 to 61. That's a huge range, obviously, in there. And that's exactly why we do these tests, y'all, is because we don't know. What I do know, however, is I know how well the Nitro V on the 𝗬𝗲𝗍𝗍 Vision held up. And I also know how well the ARR PM9 on the 𝗲𝗏 Light stacked up. And I know how all these other known brands, different steels, have done in this sharpness test. So we're going to see how this supposed M390 holds up against those. And that's the whole point of doing this, right? Hopefully that all makes sense. All right, we talked about all the issues and all the crap that I've had to deal with on this thing. In case you just, are not still sure on what size of a knife this is, I'll do a quick little comparison. There's your PM2 Para 3. Almost everybody at this point knows what a Para 3 is and what the size is. There's your standard bug out size. You can see this is definitely just a little bit shorter than your average bug out. That's what makes it a nice knife. I could have shown this while I had them out, might as well. 𝗬𝗍𝗍 Vision versus the 𝗲𝗏 Light. You can see it's shorter than both of those knives. So this is a nice small package EDC friendly knife. Comes in just at 7 1/4 inches total length. The blade is just 2 5/8, so a little over 2.5 inches of actual cutting length. Blade stock on this is 150 thousandths, a little bit on the thicker edge, or on the thicker side. After grinding this down, I did, again, a sharpening video where I put this down to about an 18-degree edge on both sides using the WorkSharp Pro, and found this to be, now it's at 10 thousandths. One of the thinnest behind-the-edge measurements that I have in my collection of knives. And that's what makes this thing interesting. The handle's right at about a 1/2 inch thick, give or take a little bit, and 3.2 ounces is the weight. This thing is ergonomically a joy, and now that it has been sharpened, it is a laser beam in terms of sharpness. And that's exactly what we wanted to get to give this thing a real honest test. I can't remember if I've mentioned this or not. When I put this on the WorkSharp, and actually first thing I did was test to see what was the angle grind on this thing from the factory. And y'all, this thing was anywhere from 24 degrees to 34 degrees. So someone literally had to be doing this as they're sharpening it on that belt grinder. I have no idea how they got the two edges to meet. And actually, if you go back and watch that video, what you'll see is one side of the knife had a relatively high and even grind. Now it's easier to do this. So normally you have, both points equally ground, right? On this one side was like this and the other side was like that. It was crazy ridiculous. So, it cut, but it cut because it's a thin, slicey blade, and that was about it. Now we got it to 10 out of 10, and that's where we wanted to start. So let's get over to the cutting table and get to cutting. See you there.
All right, so here we go on the cardboard test. We've got about 412 square inches. That's about as close as we get to mathematics around here. I'm going to hold this kind of in the natural grip that it's intended to be held. And I've left the speed of the beginning part of this cutting test at regular speed. This is real live speed here because I wanted to show you how fast and cleanly this just chopped right through this cardboard. Now, this isn't the real heavy-duty piece of cardboard. The second one, the big piece I'm going to cut next, is the heavy-duty piece. But, man, that made short work. So putting that 18-degree bevel on this knife really made a big difference, just as it did with the OK-81. And that was part of the reason for testing these back-to-back as well. I had just tested one. I thought, let me test them back to back so I'll be able to tell if there's any differences. And this is that heavy-duty, thick piece of cardboard that gave several other knives a relatively hard time. It definitely took a good bite out of the edge on a lot of my other knives. But we're cutting cleanly, nice and smooth and evenly. No issues. Of course, the thing that we're all looking for is how will it cut paper. How much of a dent are we putting in this edge? Supposedly this M390 is real. We don't know how it's heat treated. This is going to show up here. I had to clean the blade off. I had a little goo and gunk on it. So let's see what we're looking like here. That is pretty clean through that paper after that much cardboard. This is one of the best performing knives in the cardboard portion, but so was the OK-81. I think if we go back and look at the OK-81, we're going to see that it performed about the same. So let's try the nylon reinforced rubber hose and see how it cuts through here. What I'm looking for really is, can I more or less push cut through this rubber hose? Pretty thick hose, and obviously nylon reinforced, but I'm trying not to have to saw it as I've had to do with some of the other knives. A good sharp knife, you should be able to basically push through here, and you can see that really did push through here surprisingly well. So I'm very happy with how it cut through this hose. Now I'm just chopping up the little rubber bits and seeing how well it pops through those edges as well. All right, let's take a look at how it does on the paper. Still pretty smooth. Maybe something at the end I need to, no, looks like it is cutting pretty cleanly all the way through. Certainly not a 10, maybe something right there at the tip, but it still looks like even the tip's okay. So I think we're going to have to give this one an 8, and that's being pretty conservative. Okay, moving on to the sisal rope. I did look that up, by the way. That is supposedly the correct pronunciation. What I'm looking for, again, is does it pop through the rope without a lot of sawing? We've seen with a lot of other knife tests that I had to really saw hard, and in this knife, it's popping through the rope. It's what I want it to do as a good indication that this is a good sharp knife. It doesn't take a lot of sawing. So fantastic job on that. Very happy with the outcome. Let's grab a sheet of paper and see, did it do any damage to the edge? And looking pretty good right here. So far, so good. Again, I'm really trying to focus on the tip of the knife because it felt like earlier there might have been a little damage there, but apart from me not holding my paper right, it does feel like it's still cutting nice and cleanly. That's, I mean, I'm saying 7 or 8, but that's really an 8 all day long. I'm not feeling any significant snags. So let's move on to the wood here. This is as much about ergonomics as it is about sharpness or retaining sharpness. I'm going to use just the standard kind of saber grip. My thumb locked into that jimping behind the blade there. It feels good in the hand. Part of this board is really hard for some reason, and a lot of knives have had a hard time, so I'm trying to see, can it bite into that hardwood? Now I'm going to switch over to this hammer grip and continue to hack away at it. You can see now it's starting to definitely pull up some good shavings there. And I'm also looking for the grip. In the OK-81, where I had to cut away that lock bar access, that was really digging into my hand. This one's a little better than the OK-81 was. I can still feel it a little bit right there in the hand, but definitely not as bad as the OK-81. So I think that was a better job. All right, testing once again for the edge. We can see it's definitely not cutting cleanly. I really need to get a better piece of paper and stop trying to mess with this one that's already torn up. Let's try it with a fresh piece of paper to see what we get here. And even all the way through to the tip, that is pretty solid as far as not really having much of no snags that are really noticeable. Trying to cut all the way through fast. And again, my thing is, how does this compare to the OK-81? We're going to talk about that when we get to the final results section here. But overall, just, chopping my way through this piece of paper, I feel like we're still in pretty good shape. I'm going to give that a very solid 7. So let's drop it up and see what we can do. Try not to get sawdust on your strop. That's never a good thing. I always use, for some reason, when I know I need a little extra love on the blade, I'll use the rough side first and give it good 5 or 6 strokes on each side before I'll flip it over to the smooth. The grain side is what they call that. And I think I did about 20-ish, 20 to 25 strokes per side. You'll see I'll stop and I'll feel the edge here and see what we've got. Do we need a little bit more? So I'm going to give it a few more strokes on each side before really seeing how well did it drop back up into shape here. But again, looking to compare this with the OK-81, and it dropped back to a 10 basically, and looky there. That is a beautiful thing. It's slicing as cleanly through all directions of the paper. This thing is back to a 10. Apart from me being a lousy paper cutter, maybe a 9. I'm going to call it a 10. It's dropped back beautifully. Very happy about that. So let's dive into the final results and take a look at what we got here. So I know this is hard to read for y'all on the screen. I apologize for that. Obviously, the knife we tested is at the far right in the blue column there. And I really, as I mentioned a couple of times, I wanted to test this back to back against the OK-81 because I have this theory that they're exactly the same blade steel that they're using on both of those knives. They're just producing that one blank in bulk, and then they'll cut it to a different size for the 223, for the para 3 size knife. But I think it's the exact same steel. So I wanted to find out, is that really true? If so, these should perform roughly about the same on all of these tests. And the short version answer is, yeah, they performed almost identically. So that tells me several things. One, this really does feel like an M390 steel, even all the way back to resharpening both of these blades. It definitely felt like a tougher steel. It took, the good diamond stones on the Pro Work Sharp to really cut through them and reprofile those edges. I can't tell still how hard the steel is. Probably could have been a better hardness heat treat that would have given it a higher hardness rating. But y'all, this is probably going to be as good about as any average like high-end Chinese knife. A 58 to a 60, maybe a 61 at best. I don't even know if we get there, but somewhere in the 58 to 60 range would be my best guess. This held up really well. So after our cardboard cuts, I think we ranked it down to an 8 or a 9, and really it probably was more of a 9. No snags. We did our hose cuts as usual, still at least an 8. We cut 11 pieces of rope where we normally do 10. I'm putting that at a 7.5. There were no noticeable snags, but it just wasn't cutting cleanly all the way through. Cut the wood, that felt good. And maybe a 7 after that. Stropped it back to a 10. So basically no difference between these two knives. They both ranked the same way all the way through this thing. No real blade nicks until after the rope, and that was pretty minor. Very smooth and fast through the cardboard. Great bite into everything all the way through. One of the best rope cutting performances of any knife, but again, the OK-81 was kind of right there with it. Very bitey edge on this thing. Easy, deep cuts into the woods. The ergonomics were basically just like the OK-81. Very good all the way around, except for that compression lock cutout. This one was definitely not as bad as the OK-81. I cut the OK-81 opening a little bit broader and wider, and so I think I may have just left some rough corners that I can easily sand down. But just overall, excellent, shockingly good performance. I'm really happy with the results of this knife. Easy to strop back to a 10 after all that work. Didn't really lose that much of an edge. I think this is likely a legitimate M390. And again, we know from research online, there have been a whole bunch of people in the Reddit forums that have XRF tested these exact knives, not my knives, but the ones, these OK knives branded, and confirmed. And those guys are hardcore, man. They don't give anybody a break. If it wouldn't have tested, they would have been blasting on full tilt against those knives, but that's what they come up with, several different people. So again, I think it's M390. It held up exceptionally well. You definitely need to put your own edge on it. Knock it down to an 18-degree edge. I think that's about the perfect edge angle for these knives. And it drops back easily. This thing's going to last well and do well. Definitely comfortable in the hand. No issues with that pocket clip. Nice contoured scales. I don't know what else to say. This is a shocking knife. If I could only get the action on this knife to be good on this particular one, I'd be really happy with it. But as is, I think I'll probably stick with the OK-81 because the action on that thing, man, with skiff bearings, it's just about flawless. So that's going to be my probably daily carry out of these two. But, the blade itself held up fantastic. So really good test results. It is what it is. Take that for what it's worth. But it's definitely one of the best performing knives that we've done yet on our cut test. So there you go. Hopefully that's helpful. As always, if you would, down below here, hit that subscribe notification if you're not already. Throw me a thumbs up if you think this is okay. I'd love to hear any comments or suggestions. I tried to speed things up and go a little faster through the cutting test. Do y'all like that? Would you rather I slowed down in any part of it? Just let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from y'all as always. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.